right, let's jump into things. It is CPI day for Aussie dollar, so good place to start. Where we at? 10:47 on the 26th of March. So a couple of days left in the month here. So look, I'll start off with Aussie because this thing absolutely ripped off the lows in that yesterday. So we're pretty sort of actually very quiet sort of session through Asia. Sort of pretty much almost in like a little bit of a 10-point range and kind of looked like it was about to sort of roll over for a moment here, and then it just exploded. Look, from what I could see, it was mainly just off that sort of US dollar sell-off across the board. DXY, obviously a good indicator of that, and that just absolutely um, like tanked kind of thing. And Aussie was very much a recipient of a little bit of that sort of US dollar selling as well. And this is what I say that sort of like when I'm using DXY, it's not that Aussie is part of DXY, of course, everybody knows this, but the point is Aussie isn't like somehow immune to this sort of stuff. Like whether you're sort of seeing sort of DXY move up and um, the market broadly buy US dollars, or in this case they sold it off, you're not going to see Aussie isn't necessarily going to be separate to all of this, and this is why I've sort of actually changed these into a different color because I think this is a good way to sort of like just sort of do a quick sort of little analysis of how things are going in that day. Well, in that session kind of thing, so to speak, and we can sort of see, okay, what's this really going on? Because today we got the RBA. So RBA is looking 2.5% is the number that we had previously, and it's looking to sort of come in flat. So inflation, like it's got the two mandates in that. You've got inflation on one side, and then you've got sort of like sort of starting of some sort of form of recession. We had the budget out overnight, and apparently, like there's a bit of sort of like hardship to come kind of thing. I think it's always a little bit of this doom and gloom. I did see like just a couple of headline things in that, and I think it was $230 or something over, or $260 over a year sort of tax cut, and that's for everybody up to $1 million. Which they've just been joking around. Like there was a whole bunch of different headlines on it, but it works out to about $5 a week. So about the cost of a coffee, provided you don't have milk and don't have anything fancy, like a long black maybe. You can get a sort of long black a week for that. So I think he's been kind of clowned a little bit for that, and you know what I mean. It really, it's. I mean, how much can they give? I get that, but at the same time, it's almost sort of like and like a negative. I mean, you should have sort of tried to deliver that money in a different way, in my opinion. Just because this is just sort of very being received very poorly, I would say. But anyway, look, the point of this is to have a look at the charts, not see what they're doing with this stuff. So, look, as I said, this is an area that I was pretty keen to sort of see above. Obviously, the move started sort of well back down in the 80s. I mean, that for Aussie is a solid move. I mean, look, if you take that, that's 0.74%. That's 46 points just bang straight up. For Aussie, that is a big move. Like Aussie is as you know, it's not really a big mover. I mean, as I say that, look at these kind of moves through here. But you know what I mean, back-to-back candles, and I couldn't see any sort of real catalyst for it. And as such, and that obviously sort of kind of pull back down here a little bit more. So I think this is still an area you want to sort of see if it can sort of get above because it's obviously broken out above here, 50% retracement of this sell down from, call it 64. Moving down, I really did think I was looking to get buys down over here. It's funny because I put a couple of sort of levels that I was interested in on Friday last week. One of which was Aussie at 62.80. And I was like, oh, no, look, we'll get him down here and we'll get one more push back down here. So this is really where I was kind of looking for. And, if we got some sort of overshoot back down over here, that would have been great, load these things up because I do think Aussie is moving up. But, of course, I'd like a better price to sort of get long from. So may end up just having to sort of pay for this one, but we'll see how we go. As I said, we've got CPI coming out today. 2.5% is the previous. May as well just look at the news while we do this as well. And 2.5% expected. So coming up here where we're at 11:30, so in 40, just under 40 minutes. Um, not a real great deal to sort of unpack with that. Obviously, sort of the general sort of thing with it all. If it's going to be a higher print, that's going to help Aussie. So it's going to be something positive for Aussie here. We do have sort of US dollar, small, tiny little gap up this morning. Did sort of actually hold a little bit of a back test. So if that does move back up, that'll be negative for it over here. But then, of course, we've got China. China's still grinding up towards that sort of sell zone. It is finding a couple of sort of sellers early, but as we know, it's a bit of a sort of grind pair. It doesn't really sort of power on a great deal. So, US dollar is always a bit bigger. I would say almost sort of China's a little bit almost maybe neutral for this year. Like it is moving in a slightly negative position. So negative, so we'll say negative for Aussie there. So that's kind of your outlook for it there. So it's not all guns blazing for Aussie. I'm not going to be saying that sort of, Aussie's going to be sort of going back up, 64. Could be famous last words in that. And of course, you need to consider both sides of it. So, this is a little sort of outcome I'm sort of feeling with it. DXY moving up a little bit. I don't think, look, as I said, I've got a little sell zone a little bit higher for the one, so I think that's probably still got a little bit of upside for it. So that'll be a bit of a negative there. And this remains to be seen. If this is sort of like if we get a hot print, so above, say 2.6, 2.7%, I think we're going to see Aussie push up, irrelevant of these two. So it'll push up, knee-jerk reaction. These ones will then sort of kick in as to whether we hold that move or not. This is just a little sort of way that I'm gauging this thing at the moment. Should we get a low print, I think that's probably what you could be looking at, which is meaning that, we may actually sort of come back into this lower range down over here. So if we do come back down here, levels to look for 80s where we sort of springboarded up from yesterday. Generally, these big moves and that sort of come out of nowhere. There was no real direct sort of catalyst for it. They like to sort of shake this out. Anybody that didn't take profit through these moves, they'll dribble it back down, hit this level, and then maybe start to move it up a little bit more. We are seeing obviously a little bit of sort of tiny little bit of support through here. Come in early this morning at those sort of 90s. A little bit of sort of back and forth through there, but it's not really enough to sort of really call this a level. I guess you got a little bit of sort of a smaller resistances where it tried to get up through here and knock back down, knock back down. So, but I wouldn't say this is enough of a level. This is really just as it's appearing right now. So high print. I think this could certainly come back up and test those highs over 20, 24, 25, 30 level. If you do get up above that, then this is back up to this level up over here where we saw that sort of sell down from last week, or that sort of rejection to sort of come back down in the 40s. So I think, look, realistically, I think it's probably a little bit capped. I don't think we're going to be sort of seeing this thing sort of really sort of power on till we get these ones to turn around, till we see DXY hit whatever level it is going to hit and then sort of reject. So I'm just sort of having a look on another chart there. It is actually coming up and retesting as support. So look, if we get US dollar sort of selling off, if we see a little bit of a sort of short-term high with the yuan, USD cross, and we start to see that pushing back down, that'll flip these two around. If you've got that sort of high print as well, that's when you've got three ticks up, and we're going to see Aussie sort of move up a little bit more significantly. So I'll sort of see how this one sort of plays out. This is just something I'm using to sort of kind of make a visual of sort of what Aussie is doing in the short term. All right, so flip along. We had gold. Gold, another one that sort of really sort of kicked back in through yesterday's session. So obviously, sort of I was looking downside for this one here, and it sort of it pushed down and it pushed down. Jump onto whatever time frame was down around here. So this little period through here was like down, push back up, down, push back up. And as you can see, the sells are still coming, but the buyers were still pushing it up each time, came right up into this top zone over here and undid this whole big candle. So as I said, these body candles where we get these big sell downs and that, they're always a good target. It was also up in these wicks where we've seen the sell downs previously and really got bonked on the nose there. So if we drag this across here, we can almost sort of see a little bit of a rising support. Look, I think sort of certainly this little rally up here, it would want to hold. I think if you break this, you could see this whole move sort of just dribble back down over here. We do have a break of this like falling resistance, and obviously sort of found resistance on the horizontal there, and it's come back down. It seems to be holding this little level here. So really, for this to sort of keep this at the same size, for this to sort of move up here, you'd really want to get this sort of really back up above, you know, the high 20s. I mean, up above the 30, and then we could be seeing this thing move on here a little bit more. This all comes down to sort of what is going to happen with DXY here, basically, in my opinion. I think that correlation's coming back into effect. I think sort of certainly yesterday we saw that sell-off with US dollar, and we could see that gold was very much appreciating on this as well. Not so much as silver and copper, so industrial metals are really sort of working a little bit stronger there. But for the time being, I think sort of like above this line, you're looking for sort of a potential move back up to test those 30s. Should you break this line, so you can always put a little support in here, and then obviously just this little one down here, just at that wick. So look, underneath 16, 17, 16, underneath the break of this line, break of this horizontal, that puts it on warning. Take out this wick at 13, and we're targeting the lows. That's my sort of feeling. So underneath here, I think, look, I mean, there's level support, level support, level support. Don't know if these ones will hold so much. I think if you fail to hold this kind of like rally effort, you might just sort of see this thing sort of come back down. And as I said, one tap, two tap, I think a third tap down into 3K could be the one where we sort of get through to, you know, these kind of price targets over here. There's 29.80 is where I'm sort of looking for at the moment. Alternatively, look, if you do get back up and you close above 35, well, then you got something else to look at, and you got something probably back over here towards the 45 area would be your next stop, where we saw the sellers on the way down. And we could just be starting to see this into like a larger kind of range. But I do feel that, you know, DXY did a big sell down day yesterday. That's just one day. Price target for me on DXY is still a little bit higher. So we've just got to see if we can find what it needs to actually push through and find that that was actually just a little shakeout. If that is the case, then I think gold will sort of come down to these 29.80 targets, or even potentially lower, but we'll see how we go in that. As I said, I think early signs of this is a close above 28. As you can see, it's unable to close back above here, but certainly if you get a close up around those sort of 30s, I think we could see sort of a move up to sort of 45 to sort of see what happens with the market up there. All right, silver. This thing absolutely ripped yesterday. Going on what I was saying the other week, sorry. Going on what I was saying while I was on Aussie. These were the targets that I sort of thinking. I was like, look, you know, buys at 32.70, and I've been targeting this thing the whole way down, and the shorts through this period have been very good. So yeah, this whole big plan coming back down to retest this level, basically it's just like sell rips, and we've just been shorting this thing the whole way down through here. Came down, looked like we were going to get that test up here and then dribble back down over here. But this thing, it dropped down a little bit on yesterday's open, maybe this candle or so here. But from there, it just did not look back, and it just absolutely ripped. So that came up, I think it must be about 3% or so that moved. That was a big mover yesterday, 2.7%, and change. So certainly back up above where it needed to be, and this is where we were sort of saying, look, back up above here is a good chance that you're sort of coming back up to test these kind of other levels. This being the next one that I would say you need to get above. So above 33.90, I would say that's where you're going to see your next sort of little leg up over here. So it needs to hold up around this area. It's not looking great off the open, but you know, it's just that early part of the day where you don't really have a great deal of sort of true sort of volume sort of coming in. Put a little arrow through here. Really, this is just a little sort of triangle sort of consolidation through here. I think it needs to stay above sort of the 50s. Underneath 50, you might see a bit of a pullback. This was a little bit of a sort of falling resistance that obviously got respected a little bit at the start here. Didn't really think too much about it as it sort of came through, and really just sort of chopped straight through there. And really, so that was such a bounce. So if we have a look at this sell down here, so yeah, bang, back up over those 61%. So that really had sort of like springboarded back up. Underneath 50, we could see a little bit of a cool down. I'll be interested to sort of see what happens down around, say, the 28 kind of level, should this sort of come back, because obviously we had a little bit of resistance, as you can see through here. So this is just a little area here. It did sort of think about it for a brief second, as you can see, sort of overnight or whenever this, where was this? Yeah, sort of halfway through sort of Europe yesterday. So I think, look, if we could get back down around these sort of 30s, I think that'd probably be a little bit of a better level. It gives room for maybe a potential little squeeze, and then sort of see what happens from this level down here. But this is the level you definitely want to be holding, should it come back down to it, because this would be a nice little sort of back test of this horizontal, even though I'm a bit questioning this line here a little bit, because obviously it respected it a few times on the way down, but it didn't respect it so much on the way up. I mean, it kind of broke and retest, I guess you could say this, but um, yeah, I'll wait to sort of see what the market does with this line, because what can happen is they can be respecting it, respecting, then all of a sudden, when they're not. And you don't want to be sort of trading off the idea that, yes, okay, this has been respected, and then it doesn't. So, yeah, we'll see how we go with this, but certainly I think sort of around this area over here, around these sort of 33.20, 33.30, I think that could be an entry there for a long. We are seeing a little bit of a sort of push off over here, so obviously sort of a second effort coming up here. Buying pressure's not really sort of holding this along around the overbought kind of area, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of cooling off, at least early in the session. Excuse me. Yeah, beautiful. All right, move along, and DXY, the driver. So we did see that sort of ugly sell down yesterday. So up, support, and did this nice little sort of sort of shoot up, take out the highs, and then bang on its head. And 7 o'clock, so all through Europe yesterday, they absolutely pulverized this thing straight back down. It did bounce, did find sort of a bit of support, so it could be seen as a bit of a sort of back test of this area that we had been sort of looking at. And as we know, sort of like, once it's resistance, it's going to be support. So it did play its part, did its thing, bounced back up, and now we're sort of seeing, the inverse of that. Support. Now it's acting as a little bit of a resistance. I think if you get back up above this level here, above sort of 104.30, then you're really kind of actually looking at these types. I don't think this is necessarily it yet, though, as we can see, this is the area that you need to get above. Whoops. As long on that as up here. Pinpoint, no, direction. I think sort of above sort of 104.40, and it's kind of shake out on with the go. This was an area that we did highlight and say, look, this is kind of going to be it. I said yesterday, look, I don't think this is going to be it. I just don't think this looks like a significant enough level that everyone's like, oh, yep, that's it for it all. But it is a level that we had marked out. We did expect a reaction from here. We got that first reaction. I honestly didn't expect this kind of reaction, but I guess this is kind of part and parcel with it, particularly when DXY is squeezing and moving. The pullbacks can be quite violent. Like, as you can see with a couple of these moves here. Like, one thing I've known with DXY, it's not afraid to do like super deep pullbacks, and then sort of keep going. I mean, if we look at there's a pullback to the 78, bang, keeps going. I mean, at one point, this is the next move. So say this is your low, that's fine. There's that leg there, back to the 78, bang, keeps going. And if we have a look at this move through here, here we are back at the 78, boom, and it's attempting to keep going. So my point being is that sort of like it's not, these are super deep pullbacks, yes, and you got to remember that if you look at the pressure that this thing's under, they're happy to slap it down, because, this thing, a lot of the market is trying to sell those US dollars, and I do believe we are going to 101. So a lot of people trying to get on there. So the more the people that sell it down, the more stops you're going to build up above these areas, the more reason, in my opinion, that you could potentially see these things squeeze and then get sort of pushed up to these levels over here. So downside of this, not even yesterday's lows. Yesterday's lows will be quite significant, but I think underneath, still, this is the level. Till you take out this level here, and this is kind of, for me, a bit of a confirmation that, oops, no, wrong button. There we go. This one, underneath here. So obviously there's a fair bit of room to move before you get to this level here. But again, we saw the buyers, saw the buyers, saw the buyers. I think sort of underneath 103.70, and then you're sort of going back down to target these lows down over here, and I think that might be the time that we get this move down under here. But for the time being, I wouldn't be surprised if this thing sort of squeezes up and has a little bit of a shakeout, given that, as you can see, 78% pullbacks is not uncommon for a continuation, as this is sort of moving up through here. I think this has probably still got a little bit more to go. As you can see, my price target is still up over at this level over here. Let's get rid of these ones off to clean it up a little bit. Short term would be just above here, put a little alert. Back into range. Beautiful. All right. So where are we going here? We go for USD China. As you can see, this thing is still grinding. I would like to sort of see, it has sort of taken out these highs over here now. As you can see, it's still sort of moving up. This is just how it moves, so it's not a fast mover. Let's put on the 4 hour so I can see it a bit easier. You can see sell downs. They're still trying to push this thing down. I still want to see it up into the sell zone over here, 7 to 8 and that, which if this does continue to sort of push up here, we are seeing a little bit of negative divergence actually sort of come up in through this level here. This has sort of like still been grinding up while this is sort of not really. I mean, this little spike up over 80 kind of validates it a little bit. I think if these sort of things stay underneath 80, both these lines, I think you might sort of see it come into effect a little bit more. But as I said, I do believe that it will sort of just come up here and then sort of bang sell down. But it does mean it could grind a little bit higher with these moves. So we could see a little bit of an undoing of yesterday's moves. Downside, I think a close underneath 724 is where we're sort of looking for a move down. Back down over here. But I wouldn't be surprised if we get a little up and then down. And copper. This thing is just, there's no words. It's just on fire. It's just absolutely ripping. And this is what's certainly helping Aussie stay well bid. Just sort of update these a little bit more. What was it saying? Copper, yeah, at all-time highs. It's just powered through. If you look at how shallow these pullbacks are, this thing is just really getting absolutely ripped in that. A lot of this is off tariff talk, that the idea that they're going to be sort of putting tariffs on it, basically, and so the prices are going through the roof with it all. So copper's a sort of bit of a funny one because obviously it's a manufacturing metal. It's one of the most widely, if not the most widely used manufacturing metal. So it's sort of part and parcel with things that where manufacturing is obviously picking up. Manufacturing is picking up in an environment in which you're obviously a little bit more comfortable with things. It's not like, oh my God, we can't pay for our bills, so let's kick up production. But the point, sorry, 1 second. Sorry about that. And so the point with this is that the flip side of this is that obviously production costs go up with everything. So yes, okay, sort of like everybody's like going, yep, cool, let's have more of this. But you got to look at the sort of the catalyst and the reason for why these prices are moving up. as I said, sort of like, typically you'd sort of be seeing sort of, okay, manufacturing, production, these kind of things going up. So higher demand, more demand for something, the price goes up. Part and parcel, that's fine. But this thing with this at the moment, it's not necessarily running up on high demand. It's more running up on idea of tariff. So it's a different catalyst for it. And it's an interesting sort of thing like with this. It's the same in a certain way that you see with oil. That oil can sort of, the prices can sort of go up because obviously people are using it more and, there's more demand and sort of people are doing more shipping, people are doing more travel, all these sort of things go part and parcel with people being a bit happier and, more risk on kind of thing. But then it can also sort of be going up on sort of like, sort of war fears and all these kind of sort of stuff. So you got to look at what the actual catalyst for the rise is. And at the moment, it seems to be with copper that it's more tariff based than high demand based. But as we can see, is of these moves, these are only coming back 23% and it pushes through. So, yeah, I mean, I've been waiting and waiting for this thing on pullbacks. Look, I was trading it back through this period over here. I waited and missed a couple of times down here or somewhere along through here. And I've just been waiting here. So, yes, missed a couple of these last moves. And I mean, obviously, the bulk of this super move. But, I mean, at the same time, I just feel a little bit risky sort of buying these things at all-time highs, knowing sort of like, that it's moved 30% in 3 months, less than 3 months. So I think there's certainly some room for this thing to cool off eventually. I wouldn't be necessarily shorting it, not while it's hitting all-time highs, but certainly I think there's some room for this thing to sort of cool off a little bit. But we'll probably see all the same thing happen with a couple of the metals at the same time, should this sort of happen. So if we do see those sell downs on gold and silver, might see something on copper as well, but I wouldn't be holding the breath. As I said, I'm more than happy to just sort of sit and wait and look for some potential sort of deeper shakeout retest. And if I can get it back down under 490, I'll be happy with that, and then sort of see what we can do to get a larger part of that leg. The higher it goes up here, the better that this potential third leg has to be quite profitable. Because if we get a pullback down to these support areas, I mean, this is a lot of wishful thinking at the moment. It seems we're so far away from it. But you break this little sort of rising support, you break the horizontal. If you do get an entry down here, you've got the ability for this thing to come back up to give you a double top, even a lower high, gives you a fairly good sort of little percentage move, where this thing could be sort of profitable for a longs, and there's a lot less risk instead of getting long down in these areas over here. All right, so I think that's pretty much it for the charts. Just DXY, yep, Aussie silver, gold, silver, yep. And where we at? Have a look at a little bit of the data coming out. So CPI obviously out in 15 minutes. This will be the mover for Asia session, and as you can see, pretty much the only bit of data for Asia session. So then we got the pound. We got over in England, we got 3% for their headline number there. 3.7, a slight little tick down on their core. For some reason, they don't list the core on here. Not quite sure why. I'll have to sort of maybe go to a different news source and that. We're seeing Aussie a little firm up a little bit here, 63.08, sort of just prior to this, after it sort of pulled back down, got down to 97 on that pullback. So a little bit of playing around. So again, watching for that number. If we get a hot number, I think this could sort of see Aussie back up at overnight highs. Low number, probably back down underneath 63, depending, of course, again, what's happening with US dollar. Moving forward, durable goods over in the US, seeing a little bit of a slowdown. We did have a bit of US data overnight, didn't we? Yeah, so this is another thing as well, manufacturing numbers and also consumer confidence. This actually sort of came in quite sort of bearish, as you can see with the numbers. Last one was sort of revised up a little bit, but certainly moving in that sort of slower direction. New home sales, a little bit of a slowdown here, but this actually saw US dollar get a little bit of a push up around that time. So this is around 1 o'clock that this stuff came out. And if you ever look at DXY at that moment, 1 o'clock. So this candle just here, you can see it actually sort of spiked and then started, well, kind of just started down here, but got that little bit of a move back up into that area. So interesting to sort of see the reaction, because obviously that weak data wasn't something that you'd be like, yep, cool, let's buy US dollar off. It's just interesting to see the price action around these news bits as they come out. Moving on, we got durable goods. Again, a little bit of a slowdown, or a fairly large sort of drop expected here. Not really a bit of data that I sort of trade, but something to keep an eye on. And that's about it. Overnight, we haven't really got too much happening either. All right, that's it from me.